evening, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. For those who are the first-time viewer, this is an initiative where we try to get personality, whether they are international or national or even local, to come and discuss, to have a dialogue on different issues as it pertains to the global development, the regional development, and its impact on Cambodia. And hopefully through this frank exchange and dialogue, we could learn some of this, from this spontaneous discussion, some idea that somebody out there, in Cambodia could turn this into some idea to develop the country, to improve their life, their society, their community. So today we have the pleasure to have a very, very interesting personality to come. He's from Australia, but he's here in Cambodia for quite a while, and he's the executive director of the Cambodian Development Research Institute, called shortly CDRI. For those who do not know about CDRI, let me just say briefly that CDRI is one of the premier research institutions, but I will not say more than that. All I'm saying that it is their 20th anniversary, and I would like to give the honor to the Executive Director, Larry Strange, to say a few words. First, welcome, Larry.
Thank you. It's very good to be here.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you the honor to introduce yourself a bit, but foremost, say a bit about the last 20 years and how CDI came about and why it's so respected in the national and international community.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. I've now been the Executive Director of CDRI for 7 very busy and very rewarding years here in Cambodia. I'm from Australia. Prior to coming here, I was for 10 years the Director of the Asia-Australia Institute at the University of New South Wales, which was a research and policy think tank working on Australia's foreign policy issues and its relationships in the Asian region. So I have a great interest in what's happening in Asia regionally. I came in November 2003, and of course, as you say, this is CDRI's 20th anniversary. CDRI was founded in 1990. There's a very interesting story in the history of modern Cambodia. It was founded by a very visionary woman called Eva Mislevik, who had come here in 1980 as part of the humanitarian effort to assist Cambodia. Initially it was established as a training institute within the Ministry of Planning. But then in 1993, after it had spent 3 very productive years training Cambodian civil servants in English language skills, computer skills, economic and development issues, and meeting and negotiation skills, it was then transformed into an independent policy research institute, and it has functioned from its offices in Tuol Kok since that time. It's grown significantly over those 20 years. We now have more than 90 staff, almost all of whom are Cambodians. We get some of the best and brightest young Cambodians with good bachelor's, master's and PhD degrees, and we now work in 5 major policy research areas that are fundamental to Cambodia's development. They are economy, trade and regional cooperation, democratic governance and public sector reform, natural resources and the environment, poverty, agriculture and rural development, and social development. So it's a very busy role for CDRI, and we've worked very carefully over many years to remain independent, to focus on the quality and usefulness of our research to the Cambodian government, to civil society and to the private sector. So we work hard to both stay independent but be very constructive and very useful in making policy recommendations that will be helpful in supporting Cambodia's development.
Well, Larry, I must say that in case you forgot, that at one point I was a member of the board there, and quite a very exciting moment there before I left Cambodia to Geneva. But you mentioned a very broad spectrum of area that CDI has contributed to development of this country. I concur that you have made a tremendous contribution, particularly in the area of a policy, research, And I know in many institutions in the government, whether Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Commerce or Finance, the Central Bank, Rural Development, many of the senior government officials have used and taken advantage of the independent research that your institution have done. Right? And having said that, one could say that the last 20 years, you have made an impact to bring Cambodia in terms of a country that is emerging from a post-crisis, you know, moving up the ladder as being a least developed country. But, you know, we can almost feel that in the next several years, not too far away, Cambodia will move away from the status as least developed country toward a prosperous middle income country. And that's something that the Cambodian, you know, will look forward to as a legacy of hard work, you know, to rebuild the country. But perhaps we should start, you know, since this show is all about a global dialogue, a regional dialogue, maybe we should start, what's the place of Cambodia in the region and in the world? You know, where are we, you know, where were we and where should we be?
Well, this is a very interesting and quite complicated question, but it's a good time to be talking about these issues because Cambodia has just emerged from managing some of the very challenging impacts of the global financial crisis and the economic downturn that occurred. Fortunately, Asia, for many reasons, travelled much better than other parts of the world in response to that crisis. And we see now that the projections of growth and prosperity for the Asian region are in fact much healthier and more promising than other parts of the world. So Cambodia is, if you want to use the term geopolitical, it's very well located geopolitically.
Yes.
It is, despite the difficulties of Cambodian history and the challenges that has faced, particularly in terms of human resource capacity, the loss of a generation of technical, professional, educated expertise, we now see, you know, with strong, stable leadership in Cambodia and sustained peace, we've seen an extraordinary track record of development and growth over the past decade in particular, quite remarkable levels of growth compared even to other parts of Asia, but many challenges remain. The reason I'm so interested in the issue of Cambodia's place in the region particularly is that more and more the fundamental development challenges and opportunities for Cambodia have a regional aspect. Cambodia is well located in the Greater Mekong sub-region. It's an interesting sub-region that links Northeast Asia, the great countries and economies of China, Korea and Japan, with the other members of ASEAN. Cambodia, of course, has been a very committed and productive member of ASEAN since 1999. And then, of course, from ASEAN, you have the linkages both economically and geopolitically to Australia and New Zealand. So Cambodia is very well placed to benefit from the prosperity of Asia, the levels of growth, but also some of the challenges that will be faced in terms of ensuring Cambodia is more competitive, that it discovers new markets in Cambodia in the region for its products, particularly for agricultural products, but also its benefit from the new connectivity that will emerge as infrastructure is improved. We see great progress in the building and restoration of major roads in Cambodia, the linkages of those roads with highways linking Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, up into southern China. We see developments in the rail network that will mean within the next 10 years you'll be able to travel comfortably by train from Singapore right up through the Greater Mekong sub-region, including Cambodia, into China and beyond. And we see much progress in the people-to-people connectivity as well. So more and more the issues of Cambodia's prosperity and growth have a regional context, whether it's trade, the new markets for important agricultural products such as rice, cassava, soy, maize, rubber and others, but also the opportunities to attract regional investment in building light industry, for example, food processing and light manufacturing. So many of these national issues for Cambodia now have a very significant regional aspect as well.
you mentioned a lot about regional, global trade and everything. So maybe the underlying current is more, the economic liberalization, or economic integration in this context of Cambodia in the region of the world. And, so you see a lot of this initiative that is being pushed. Some are international, like the World Trade Organization. Some are more regional, ASEAN and the ASEAN plus the ASEAN Regional Forum, the East Asia Summit. All these things, I see Cambodia is very active in that. Have you seen, from your research perspective, the challenge? Because you could go to all these meetings, and have great discussion. But in terms of translating this opportunity available on paper into concrete, tradable, bankable, investable, if I can use this word, that can be translated into actual opportunity for Cambodian.
Well, I think it's very important to emphasize that I think externally Cambodia is now perceived as a very responsible international citizen and player in the international community. A very good example is Cambodia's participation in the United Nations, and now, rather than receiving peacekeeping forces from the United Nations, Cambodia contributes to United Nations peacekeeping efforts elsewhere. This is a remarkable development for Cambodia. But if we bring things closer to home, a good example to discuss would be the ASEAN Economic Community agenda. ASEAN has made a commitment to establish an ASEAN Economic Community by 2015. There is something called an ASEAN scorecard that ranks how well prepared each of the ASEAN countries and economies are for this agenda of ASEAN Economic Community. Well, we're doing very well, and we're doing well. One of the reasons we can actually relate back to your role in relation to Cambodia's accession to the WTO. Now, this accession was in some ways quite controversial at the time. A least developed country signing up to a very demanding compliance program with the WTO. But what it meant was that from early in its economic development in the past decade, Cambodia was one of the most open economies in the region. As a result, it is naturally now ahead of some other ASEAN countries in its preparedness for the ASEAN Economic Community, because it is such an open economy. In the most recent scorecard and its discussion in meetings in Hanoi in July, Cambodia was ranked third in its preparedness, behind only Singapore and Malaysia, because of the openness of economy. Now, there are still some challenges that Cambodia has to meet. One of them is the whole issue of the cross-border movement of people and goods. Still too much red tape, still too high a cost, still too much difficulty for major transporters and logistic companies, and for the ease of movement of people between the ASEAN countries from Cambodia. So there are challenges, but it's actually quite a good story for Cambodia, that because of its openness and because of its stable macroeconomic management and performance, it's actually very well placed compared to some of the ASEAN countries.
Larry, I cannot help but to say that, and I always say this when I go to give a different speech, that, during the Cold War, Cambodia get caught between two blocks. Very, huge, 80 million on one side, 70-some million on the other side, and we get squeezed in the middle. But during the peacetime, it's beautiful to be squeezed by two, now not anymore ideological block, but by two big market. So what I see is that, in a few years' time, when the Japanese finish building the bridge over the Mekong at Net Luang, you will see the ASEAN connectivities right there. So a truck from Ho Chi Minh City will make it in one-day trip to Bangkok, and it will cut across Cambodia. So Cambodia will be a player in regional, trade there. But I think I agree with you that, physical infrastructure is one thing, but we have to also tackle the soft infrastructure, which is trade facilitation. How do we facilitate this border transaction? because ultimately you go for volume. You know, the more economic transaction take place, the more revenue, the more employment, the more activity, you know, the country benefit. So this is something that I really look forward to see improve. And of course, I think the Asian Development Bank is playing a big role. It's their flagship region, the Greater Mekong sub-region. You know, so perhaps you may want to comment something a bit about this GMS.
Well, yes, this is a very interesting set of issues, and you are quite right. In both the GMS program of the ADB, but also in the recently announced development of a master plan for ASEAN connectivity, it's very clear that the hard infrastructure is way ahead of the soft infrastructure. And what that means is that the roads, the bridges, the highway connections, the railways, this program of infrastructure development is going very well and better than might have been anticipated. But there is a real lag in very important aspects of the soft infrastructure, the cross-border transaction arrangements that you've mentioned. The very important issue of the longer-term institutional strengthening of the ministries and agencies in countries like Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, to enable them to cope with this very demanding new set of relationships in the Greater Mekong sub-region. And an issue I would add to that we see very strongly from CDRI's research is the whole issue of the gap or the disconnect between what our education system is producing and the needs of both the labour market and government institutions in this very challenging environment. We, to speak very frankly, we are an independent research institute, that is my job. We have to look very carefully at the reform and improvement of the quality, not just of tertiary education in Cambodia, but the urgent priority is vocational education and training, to provide people with the vocational skills that a booming private sector is crying out for, and that are fundamental to achieving some other objectives. For example, agricultural development. We need to have decentralized agricultural vocational education and training that provides rural Cambodians, with especially young Cambodians, with the new skills they need to really improve the productivity, the market responsiveness, and the quality of Cambodian agricultural products. So these things are all linked, but your point about the soft infrastructure lagging behind is a very important message for policymakers and for the private sector, I think.
You know, I think you mentioned connectivity, regional integration. I would say that all in all, we're on the right track, right? We're going quite fast on the physical infrastructure. The soft infrastructure is still lagging behind, but it's on the way. It's on the way. And for example, I would say that in the context of agriculture, you know, a few months ago, His Excellency, that your Prime Minister have launched the rice export policy. And from there are so many different, you know, effort to streamline paperwork, to streamline the process, to reduce costs. Why? Because of this desire to be competitive. So I think momentum are there from different angle. But I want to really stress one point that you mentioned, which is education. I think Cambodia reached a point where I see every day as I drive on the road, you know, this growing young mass, you know, a Cambodian mass who's really crying out for a more qualified educational dimension that they can put to work. It's one thing to go to university and get an economist degree, an accounting degree. Fine, I have no problem about economism, with due respect to you as economists. But I think this economy, to go to the next phase of development, we're going to need much more Cambodian who can use their hand, their skill. For example, one thing that I'm very impressed of this Southeast Asia TV is that I see the whole studio, I don't know how many hundred people here, they all run by young, good, capable technician. And you see in for example, if I take the area of tourism, right, to move a bit to the soft side, right, ASEAN have this tourism accreditation, hospitality accreditation program where you know, if you graduate with a certification from a recognized institute of tourism in Cambodia, a Cambodian chef could one day go to Phuket and work in a five-star hotel, or go to Amanjaya in Singapore. And this is the beauty of this ASEAN regionalization. But education, indeed, I concur with you. Moving to agriculture, since you stressed quite a bit that is one of the growth sector, perhaps we could look a little bit what are some of the opportunity and challenge in the agriculture sector. I went to the Philippines, you know, with a special mandate to look for an opportunity to sell some rice to the government of the Philippines. One of my you know, point that I was stressed to say that, look, for example, Cambodia have 2.2 million hectare of land, you know, harvestable land, for only 14 million people, versus the Philippines, who has 2.8 million hectare of land for 94 million people.
Exactly.
And I say, why we have an opportunity to grow more is that, you know, our rice yield is only 2.67, right? And we only do one crop per year. Vietnam do 3.5, Thailand do 3, to the point their soil is exhausted, the flavor is out. So Cambodia have the opportunity to move up this quantitative, you know, scale, but it doesn't happen by itself. It requires knowledge, it requires technical contribution, it requires research, it requires foremost the people who are going to actually be working in the field with the farmer to show that.
No, I agree, and there is an enormous opportunity here for Cambodia. I have to say, I think one of the only positive aspects of the global financial crisis, the downturn and its impact, was that we saw a real focus by the Royal Government of Cambodia and its development partners on the agricultural sector. Agricultural growth was sustained during the crisis, and there is now, through the National Strategic Development Plan to 2013, the rice policy, there's a quite exciting new commitment and focus by the government, its development partners, and the private sector. But there are many challenges in the implementation of this very strong visionary strategy. Ministerial coordination between the government agencies responsible for agriculture, forest, fisheries, water resource management, the environment, vocational education, commerce. This is still a challenge for a developing country where institutions are building over time. The vocational education gap that we talked about before. The issue of infrastructure development, moving from the major highways and arterial roads through to the more minor rural roads that actually provide access for farmers to markets and to the acquisition of fertilizers and other things that they need. The appropriate use of fertilizers to enhance yield and the availability of safe, affordable fertilizers. The cost of energy and the need to reduce that cost for everyone, but especially for rural communities. The issue of agricultural extension services, not just ensuring they are available and provided, but with the private sector moving into the provision of some of these services, what is the quality control of the quality of some of those services being delivered? Water resource management, a very big issue. You rightly say Cambodia has one of the biggest arable land advantages in our region. We also have a very healthy supply of water so far. Let's not think about climate change just in this discussion, but we have plenty of water, but it is not well captured and managed. And some of the most interesting research CDRI has been doing is to work with local water user groups and farmers associations, developing models of how they measure irrigation flows, availability of water, and how they share those resources better and cooperate to resolve conflict and competition for water resources. This will be a very big issue for the future of Cambodia's agricultural development. But the strategy is in place, the strategy is on track, but many of these implementation challenges still require attention.
You know, I have this analogy, you know, as a Cambodian, we always think in terms of metaphor. And for me, the rice strategy is like a mini WTO. You know, we succeed in mobilizing fast accession to WTO. It's a very challenging task at that time, the first least developed country to enter in 2.5 years, so negotiation. Why? Because we're able to make this as an overarching national agenda. And the Prime Minister was very forceful in that time that this is it, we have to enter the WTO and things develop. And I see this similar momentum drive with this rice export policy when the Prime Minister was launching at the CDC. I feel this passionate plea to say, look, we have an opportunity, we have to mobilize and we have to do it. And perhaps in my own little way, I could say this metaphor that, look, well, the number is a little bit off here and there, okay? But say we are 14 million Cambodian, right? It's a pyramid down. About 10 million are farmer. So out of that 10 million, there are about 8 of them are probably working in the rice field. We produce, from these 8 million workers, we produce about 7 million paddy tons, metric ton of paddy. We consume about 4 million tons, so the pyramid keep coming down. And then we left about 3 million tons, metric ton of paddy. And if we mill it, we're down to 1.5 million tons. So my point is that if we are able to mobilize the necessary support, commitment, facilitation from the bureaucracy, from those who are supposed to be helping, and these are very small group, right, which is very small. If we're able to export these 1.5 million tons of rice at a price of average about $600 per tons, you imagine the ripple effect on the local economy, on the farming community, on the welfare of the whole Cambodia. And that's, to me, it's the rice is the mini WTO, and it's I see this as a passion, you know, to push, and I really look forward to see this pilot. I would say this is the first time in agriculture we have a product that have a strategy. I look forward, you know, to have similar, the government tackle a similar product strategy, like
I agree.
cassava, like corn, like soybean,
Yeah.
like rubber.
We
need that.
And let's not forget,
Yes.
If we learn good lessons from hopefully the success of the rice strategy, translate them, as you say, to other agricultural products. Let's go back to where we started, of Cambodia's geopolitical situation. We are very close, especially with the connectivity, to these huge potential markets in China, Korea, Japan, and with the integration that will occur, Cambodia has very good relations with all of those major players now. China, Korea, Japan, increasingly also the United States, ASEAN. So Cambodia is very well positioned to benefit from these potential markets.
Larry, I think unfortunately we're coming to the end of the program. 30 minutes is not long enough for a topic of this size. But perhaps I'd like to give you the last shot, maybe your vision of CDRI in the next 10 years. Well, and perhaps something that I know that is dear to you is Angkor Wat.
Well, I'll answer the first point. One of my agendas in the next 10 years is to make myself redundant and replace myself as the executive director of CDRI with a very well qualified and suitable Cambodian. That's one agenda. But look, our agenda is to strengthen the quality of our research, to make it even more relevant in partnership with the government and its development partners, and to invest more in the skills of our Cambodian researchers. That's our agenda. On the things that excite me about Cambodia culturally, my background is partly in Indian studies, so I have a great interest in the culture of Angkor and the great benefit to Cambodia of this cultural heritage that is at the core of Khmer identity, but also is a marketable cultural product. The other thing is I'm very interested in Cambodia is the very exciting developments in the contemporary art scene, in young Cambodians involved in filmmaking and performance. There are very exciting developments that strengthen Cambodia's modern cultural identity, but they're also marketable cultural products for Cambodia's prosperity and future. So exciting developments on all those fronts.
As a trade negotiator, I can't help but to say that when we negotiated the WTO accession, I was very clear that we had to turn a cultural asset into an economic asset. And that, my friend, I will conclude our program. So, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of the program. And Larry, let me just say, on behalf of the station, and thanks for you taking the time. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see each other next week. Good night.